Thank you so much, and thank you for the warm welcome. So usually having the session right after lunch break is not a good thing. I hope you're all excited and fully energized and loaded up. So let's get started. So
Natalia, I'm here for watching whether you sleep.
Yeah. So in the next minutes, we want to give you an update about what IBM is up to, and as Natalia said, what's happening around our advancements towards quantum advantage. And if we take that point that Natalia also had in the introduction, that quantum is happening also outside of the labs. 2016 was that pivotal moment for us in IBM when we opened our first offerings for 5-qubit systems back in the day, accessible via the cloud. This was our moment where we took the work that we've been doing for years before that outside of the lab environment. And if you look ahead about what we are doing today, we have opened a second quantum data center already. Anna Paula, our Europe boss of IBM, mentioned it this morning in her keynote. We have it here in Germany. So that's really an important market, an important community that we want to be part of. And that's part of our game plan. So part of our game plan is also make quantum computing accessible, but also advancing the several aspects of quantum computing that come together on their journey towards quantum advantage. And as I mentioned, we have now 2 quantum data centers. One is in New York, in the state of New York in Poughkeepsie, where we have a number of utility-scale quantum computers. The other one in Ehningen we opened last October with Chancellor Scholz, and we expanded back then. So we now have 3 quantum computers there. They are all in both quantum data centers more than 100 qubits, because that is really important. If one of our colleagues told it on a stage in one of his presentations, if you're not doing 100+ qubits, you're not doing quantum. Because that's really where you hit the barrier of not simulating, but really going to the real assets of quantum computing and the advantages that you can see there. Why do we do quantum computing in Europe? Europe is a thriving community around quantum. Europe is a powerhouse for several or a lot of global players, but Europe also bears its own cultural expectations that we have, and we want to address that. So it was really part of our long-term worldwide plan to bring quantum computing here to Germany as a hub for Europe. It also combines the work that our teams are doing, so Heike leading the team in Zurich, I'm leading the team here in Germany, so we have also experts of IBM that work on these new advancements, that work on bringing quantum computing into a production use case, that work on operating quantum computer and quantum data centers. And so we now have in Ehningen 3 quantum processors with more than 100 qubits. The Heron processor that we opened is among the top 2 of our fleet's computers in terms of quality and speed. So that's really top-notch assets that we have in exit there. And it's important that we also use it as a showcase for the right side. So thinking around data locality, data privacy requirements in the beginning. So all the user workflow data, circuit input, circuit outputs is retained within the EU. We use our cloud data center in Frankfurt. So it's really also for us a proof point that you can do that in a sovereign aspect and not fall back only to global networks. And part of that long-term plan is, of course, our big milestones that we have. And this is what we're going to dive into deeper in just a minute. So 2023 was for us a pivotal moment when we proved that with 100+ qubits, you are able to establish something we called quantum utility. So quantum is approaching a phase where you are not able to cope with traditional classical computing, even with brute force methods. This was 2 years ago. Yes, the classical computing side improved significantly. We just opened Jupyter as Europe's fastest supercomputing cluster, so things are in flux on all sides. But the story is continuing. So we are looking at how to demonstrate quantum advantage in the next, 15 months? So ambitious roadmap, but we'll go into that in just a few seconds. And then ultimately for us, the far-term goal is obviously to look at delivering the first large-scale fault-tolerant quantum computer that you're really entering the domain of using a quantum advantage in a real-world environment. And yes, that is what I was just referring to. the quantum computer, where we demonstrated that you can really use error mitigation, which was also not realistic at the time, to cut through the noise of noisy quantum computers, and do useful work that you cannot cope up with traditional classical computing. And from there on, we will obviously look at what the research team under Heike is working on, that you will see in the next few coming years. Heike?
Yeah. Thank you very much, David. I think I want to continue here. And I think it's important on this chart, as David said, that here we use error mitigation to demonstrate it for the first time, kind of that a quantum computing result is the benchmark for classical approximation methods, which have been improved after we have published our quantum result. And remember the 127 qubits and 2,880 gates operations, 2-qubit gate operations, because you will see how this evolves. And this then tells you also that how we want to reach quantum advantage. And this was this result was published in 2023, and it's on the Eagle quantum computer. So where do we want to go? We want to demonstrate quantum advantage, which means we want to show that a quantum computer can do a workload more accurate, or more energy efficient, more effective, or cost efficient also, right, than a classical computer alone. And when you look at this chart where you see the simulation cost as a function of circuit complexity, then you see that for the classical computers, it goes exponentially up. And that's a problem which we want to do, why we want to have quantum computers, because if you have a fault-tolerant quantum computer, then you have a much slower slope of increasing simulation cost with circuit complexity. And this then can give you a quantum advantage in this regime. We're not yet there to have a fault-tolerant quantum computer, and we believe that there is something where we can make quantum advantage demonstrated already before we have the fault-tolerant quantum computer. And this is on looking on this slope here. This is actually where we use error mitigation and error suppression. And this means that we use techniques to mitigate the error. We don't correct it, but we mitigate it, that we can get an error-free result. It also needs overhead, but it needs less overhead than error correction, and less overhead or less cost than a classical computer. And so in this regime, we can also achieve quantum advantage, although we don't have yet a fault-tolerant quantum computer. That's a sketch, right? Now we have to prove that this is possible, and this is what we're working on. And I want to show you what are we doing on the hardware side, the software side, the algorithm side, and the application side in order to go from today, where we are here, and this crossing point actually shifts also, right? It's not a fixed point, into this regime. So one key item is Heron. Heron is a chip where we kind of put all the learnings over the last 10 years into a new design of a quantum processor in Heron, which comes in 133 or 156 qubits, and has a tunable coupler architecture, which suppresses the crosstalk. We have, with this chip, actually really boosted the quality and the fidelity of our chips, and also the speed. And this chip is also designed for really creating and scaling up a quantum computer and a quantum system in a modular fashion. So now for the experts a bit, right? I mean, the point where we want to go, what you see here is actually the 2-qubit gate errors, which are very important for the quality of the quantum computation. And you see it on a logarithmic scale, the error rate, as a function of the years. And you see here the different processors which we have developed, and we continuously go down in error, which is very important because you want to go down really to this to the very low error rate. And with implementing Heron, you see that we really made a jump in the quality of our chips, in reducing the error rate, and we are achieving even today like 8 times 10 to the minus 4, and the median is about 1.5 times 10 to the minus 3. And this is important because you need a small error in order to correct later. And you need a small error for showing quantum advantage, because if you have less error, you can make more gate operations and you can solve a more complex problem. So the other big jump which we are doing is actually coming this year. We announced that we are implementing a new chip. We are already testing it. It's called Nighthawk. And the big benefit and improvement of this chip is that we, of course, also use a tunable coupler architecture. It has 120 qubits, but the difference is that we are moving to a new qubit architecture. So we move to this 4-degree connectivity, which is a square lattice architecture. So each of these black points is in principle a qubit, and each qubit has kind of 4 nearest neighbor, and thus it's called a 4-degree connectivity. And with this 4-degree connectivity, you actually need less 2-qubit gates for implementing a certain problem in your processor. And this allows you then to increase the complexity of your circuit with a reduced circuit depth in the same error budget you have. So that's very important. And here you see that this works in a few examples. The top example, it's kind of a toy example. And you see here, this is kind of the number of the depths you need in order to solve your problem with a square lattice or with the former architecture which we use, the so-called heavy hex lattice. And you see that's a significant improvement of the number of 2-qubit gates operations you need to do for 48 to a depth of 4. And if you go to a more real example, and these are the so-called sample-based quantum diagonalization examples, which are interesting for chemistry. And you see also here a significant improvement by going from the heavy hex architecture to this square lattice architecture. So that's another item in how we want to come closer to the quantum advantage and demonstrate it. So you may have seen all our roadmap. I don't have time to go into the details of our roadmap, but you find it online. But what I wanted to highlight is, again, also chip improvements we are going to make in the next couple of years towards error correction. And you see on all these chips, we are able to use error mitigation, and we implement the Nighthawk architecture this year. And we then, you see this number here, 5,000, 7,500, 10,000, 15,000. These are the number of 2-qubit gate operations you can do with this chip without getting, or with having still an error-free result. And if you remember before, it was like 2,800, right? Now we are increasing this number. This means you can solve more complex problems with these chips. And we are also, the Nighthawk keeps kind of the 120 qubits. So let's move on. As David already mentioned, right, our big task is to demonstrate quantum advantage by 2026. And to demonstrate this, you also, as a researcher, have to say, how do I demonstrate it? How do I verify it? How do I make sure that this is really true? And it may be also something which, you demonstrate it, and then 3 months later, there may be a classical method which also have improved and catches you, right? So then you have to go to do the next step, right? So, and to verify this, it's important on one hand that the methods that you use provide a provable confidence bounds, and so quantum error mitigation or also post-selected quantum error detection, these are all methods which are used. And I don't want to go really into detail, but I wanted to highlight one example, which is from Algorithmic, where they are using tensor network error mitigation in order to mitigate the error, which is actually a very, very nice method, which really also provides a provable confidence bound. Then we also need algorithmic approaches with a guaranteed solution bound. And so here, an example are variational algorithms. And I mentioned before that we are working on the sample-based quantum diagonalization, which is the method which we used here. It's a collaboration between an HPC center, Riken in Japan, where we use the HPC in collaboration with our IBM Quantum System 2, a quantum computer, to actually work on chemistry methods. In this case, it's a cluster on 4-iron 4-sulfide. And we demonstrated that with the collaboration of the quantum computer and the HPC together, we can speed up the result and we can calculate things which the classical or the quantum alone could not do. And that's actually where we believe the secret is, the combination of using both together in synergy. And the third is problems with efficient classical verification. And also here, we work together with partners. And there are some methods like peaked circuit sampling or optimization problems, where you see here, for example, that by QPU and CPU working together, you have much lower time which is needed than if you have CPU and GPU. And also QPU, you have to check outside, right? They have made a lot of progress recently on optimization, algorithm development, and doing also benchmarking of our systems. So software is another big piece, which is a lot of improvement has been done. Here we are working on Qiskit, the open software ecosystem, and that's also important to really create and extract value from quantum computers in a scalable way. So I wanted to share with you kind of this overview of Qiskit. I mean, if you look back many years, you see how the software stack has really evolved a lot. There is Qiskit for quantum information science, where you have the circuit, the compiler, the primitives, etc. Then you also have here Benchpress and FT compiler, also Rust works. I think a lot of improvements are made on different levels, also on providing more features to be used and accessible. And the other thing is also that the Qiskit is really an open ecosystem for quantum computing, and you see it actually also here on the quantum resource plugins, where more than 10 plugins are available. And it's hardware agnostic, so many different other hardware providers are also using Qiskit. You have many more other features. I don't want to go into too much detail, but you see that an efficient software stack is very important also for creating speed and for efficiency. This means a compiler, because it defines also how many 2-qubit gate operations you're using, whether it's optimized or not. And the same is for the overall speed of the compilation and other things. So meanwhile, we have actually also, by implementing, for example, last year, Rust, moving from Python to Rust for the transpiler, increased the transpilation by a factor of 100. Right? That's significant, because that gives you really speed of your computation in the end. We have meanwhile more than 74% of people who program quantum computers use Qiskit. There are more than 7,400 dependent projects in open source Qiskit, and many more numbers I could give you. But I want to move on, because there is more to come. We also have started Qiskit functions catalog, and this catalog and these functions which are provided in this catalog give you actually also accelerate your work, because most people, they only want to use quantum computers for solving a problem, right? How can we accelerate this? And the circuit function and the application functions are one item. With the circuit functions, actually, there are tools provided which allow you to use pre-built transpilation, error suppression, and error mitigation workflows. And the same is for application functions. There are also pre-built functions which are used for chemistry, for optimization, machine learning, computational fluid, etc. And in these function catalog, there are actually, of course, functions which we have provided, but also many of our partners. So we have, like, for example, from QPU, from Algorithmics, and others, who then actually use also this platform to provide these functions to the community. So now I have to speed up, because the key part is going beyond the quantum advantage, right? And for this, we are for beyond error mitigation, and for this we have to implement error correction. And so you see, when you go and look at these numbers from 2028 to 29, you see a big jump from 15K to 100 million, and then to 1 billion. And this, of course, requires error correction. So I want to quickly mention how we want to achieve quantum error correction by 2029. And as you all know, quantum error correction is much more difficult than classical correction. You need a lot of overhead, because the qubit cannot be copied. And there's a lot of research in the error correction algorithms, because if you have too much of an overhead, it's kind of difficult because you need too many qubits, right? So one is to reduce the errors qubits make, but the other thing is come up with a smarter algorithm that you need less physical qubits for implementing a logical qubit. And this is what we have been working on. There was a publication last year. And in this publication, our colleagues from the error correction team, they actually figured out a new code, which is called the so-called gross code, which needs only 10 times less qubits, physical qubits, for implementing an error-corrected qubit. And so it's a kind of a topological code. There is one caveat which comes in, because you need to connect distant qubits with each other. So you see our square lattice, but then we also need to connect distant qubits. So we need quantum connectors built to implement this. And you're smiling, we already have it done. I don't have time to talk about it today. But this has been proven that we can connect on the chip over longer distances, different qubits with the same fidelity. And this, of course, makes it then implementable, because we now need like 144 code qubits, and it comes in 12. So we have like 12 logical qubits with these 144 physical qubits. And so we provide and build this up also in a modular fashion, as we build also the hardware, the processors, and the vacuum system. And this is a sketch here where you have then this bivariate bicycle code, which is kind of a topological code. This is where the tar is here, which is the quantum memory. Then you have the logical processing unit. Again, you need quantum connectors. And this provides then a unit which you need for scaling, then also your fault, to build a scalable fault-tolerant quantum computer. And so you can imagine we use now these units and connect these units, again, by a quantum bus. And these are the so-called L couplers to connect these units of 12 logical qubits with each other and thus be able to scale it up. And we need then also a magic state factory to really make the error correction and provide like a universal machine. So this code and the way we build it is 90% more efficient than the surface code, and it's modular in nature, which then allows us to really scale up the fault-tolerant quantum computers in a modular fashion. So the goal, what we have in the next couple of years is, this year, we want to demonstrate 2 logical qubits with this quantum memory, with this 6-way connectivity, 4 out of the square lattice, 2 over distances. We need the C couplers for this. Then next year, we want to demonstrate Kookaburra, which is then a full unit with a logical processor unit, also demonstrating real-time decoding. We already have made a lot of progress here in the speed and error efficiency. Then Kookadoo by 2027, where we then use the L couplers to connect 2 of those units, and you can imagine then in 2028, and we want to combine it then with a magic state factory. So that's a plan, we are working on it. Then it's not only fantasy and PowerPoint. I also have brought you like this coupler that we are already working and having built, those couplers, how we can connect quantum processors with microwave couplers to keep the fidelity which we need. So the big goal which we have is to demonstrate by 2029 a large-scale fault-tolerant systems with all these different tools which we are building up in parallel and starting to bring together this year and for the next couple of years. This is then a sketch of how our quantum data center will look like. You may be familiar with the system 2, which we have here. And then this is the system which we wanted to build by 2029. It's called IBM Quantum Starling. And it has 200 logical qubits we're targeting and 100 million quantum gates it can then do. In parallel, we are already working then on the next version of the Blue Jay, which is supposed to be built by 2033. And it then has 2,000 logical qubits and 1 billion gate operations it can do. So you see there's a clear plan. We're working on all the units. And then, of course, it's a fault-tolerant system, which can provide true value compared to classical systems. And important is, however, also the integration with classical systems, right? So we deliver, quantum and classical together. And this is why I mentioned before already, we already work on integrating HPC with classical. We already have also, as part of Qiskit, Slurm schedulers implemented. You have simple plugins you can use, etc. So if you want to know more about this stuff, right, I think it's really cool stuff, feel free to come by at our booth. And I have a colleague also at the end of the room. He's happy to also scan your badge and then provide you also with further information. And we both are here also for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.